Well, it's a bright sunny day where I am, and actually I can look out the window and see the beach, and so it looks like a great time to talk about organizing for security. And so we're now moving into Chapter 5. We're going to talk about how do we build a security organization within a corporation, and what are the components, and what are the different models that you can use for doing that. Here's the agenda in the overarching slideshow. I've already talked in a separate video about the final exam, and so in this video we're going to move forward and start looking at those organizational approaches to security within the organization. But it wouldn't be, one of these presentations unless we went back to, yep, you got it, the CNSS model, just to keep that at the forefront, that confidentiality, integrity, availability of information, policy, education, and technology, and then storage, processing, and transmission, those different stages where you want to protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information. So this should be old hat, 5 chapters now where you've seen this slide. You should be very comfortable with it. When you go to sleep at night, you see the cube just floating, counting cubes, counting CNS. Wake up. Don't go to sleep. We're at the beginning of the video, not the end. Let's look at objectives again, and for this particular lesson. So we're going to look at organizational approaches associated, and here are the different components associated with that. How do you plan and staff an organization? What are internal and external factors and to consider? Looking at your typical job titles and functions within that organization, and then some components of a security education, training, and awareness program, and how you manage those particular projects. So going to be a great chapter to look at with these kind of objectives there. Let's go into our introduction now. So you're going to use security program to describe this whole set of this list of personnel and plans and policy and initiatives related to information security. So it's a whole idea. So when we talk about information security program, it's everything. What's the structure? What's the organization? Who reports to whom within that organization that allows you to be effective? And there are a couple of different variables that you have to consider when you're starting to build this. Let's look at a couple of those now. First of all, organizational culture. We've talked about this throughout all the videos, but really the security program has to be aligned with the intent of the CEO and the organization. And some of those cultures are going to be a win-lose culture. Some of those are going to be based on merit. Some of those are going to be based on you come in at the lowest level and work all the way up, hierarchical. So you got to figure out what your organizational culture is. How do you get things done within your particular company? And then once you know how you get things done, that's what organizational culture is, then you can organize security so that it's effective within that culture. Something that's very effective in one company may not be effective in another company based just on that culture. Second component is size. If you're looking at very large companies, you're going to have lots of folks involved with security. Looking at very small companies, there may be one person, and that person is doing everything. They have to assume all of the roles within here, which may create some conflict of interest. And so you've just got different characteristics associated with it when you look at size. Budget, now how much money you have for people and how much money you have for capital will limit who you can attract to work within your company and what they can do. If you don't have a lot of technical tools, you're going to have to use education, training, and awareness and policy to address the needs of your organization. So if you don't have the budget to buy those technology tools, you're not going to be able to use that arm as well. Generally, as organizations increase in size, the security departments become more and more taxed in terms of trying to deal with that organizational structure and address all of those particular needs. All right, let's continue and look at some other kind of considerations for organizing for security. You want to probably build some internal groups that address different components. So you may have somebody working on privacy, or a group working on privacy, another group working on security, another group working on risk management. You may have another group working on response. So you want to split things down as you go along, and then again, smaller organizations are just going to have smaller staffs associated with dealing with what they're trying to address. All right, let's start talking now at the top end of the scale. Let's say that we've got a very large organization. Here you got more than 10,000 computers. That's the definition that we're using for a very large organization. Security budgets are going to grow faster than IT budgets because of the risk and complexity associated with that. You're going to have some challenges here in terms of how much money you've got and how effective you are. So you're going to have to be judicious with whatever funding you've got. Even though it looks on paper like you've got a lot of money, you don't have a lot of money compared to what smaller organizations may be doing. But you should be able to realize some economy of scale associated with deploying security to that very large group. Typically, very large organizations do a better job in policy and resource management, and about a third have handled incidents in agreement with their incident response plan. Hopefully you're one of those third. It is the first thing you should start to focus on. All right, well, we've talked about some of the characteristics with very large organizations and the challenges they have. They're going to have some challenges with complexity. They're going to have large budgets, but they typically spend less per user of that budget. Their budgets will tend to grow faster than the general IT budget. They tend to do a good job in policy and resource management. They tend to be challenged in incident response because, to be honest, a lot of incidents are going on. All right, let's look at large organizations. Large organizations we've defined as between 1,000 and 10,000 computers. Again, their security approach, like very large organizations, should be mature, integrated planning and policy into the organizational culture. They don't always put a lot of resources into the security program, and they tend to spend proportionally less than, say, smaller institutions. So you got to be careful in that group in terms of how are you going to deploy something. Let's take this now and explore this with a little bit more detail and look at one particular approach associated with security in a large organization. So one approach, you kind of split it into 4 different lanes, if you will, or 4 different areas. One is going to be, those functions related to security that are performed by non-technology business units outside of IT. Those functions performed by IT groups outside of information security. Those functions performed within information security department as customer service, and then those functions that are performed within information security as a part of compliance. So again, if you're working in a large organization, this may be how you start to organize your structure, looking at security in these 4 lanes: compliance within information security, customer service within information security, functions performed by IT groups outside of information security, and then functions performed outside of IT completely by non-technology business organizations. All right, let's look a little bit more at security within this large organization now and peel it back some more. You're typically going to have a CISO, a Computer Information Security Officer, that's responsible for or has responsibility for information security functions. You're going to have some full-time personnel that are deployed. Depends really on the culture and what type of business you're actually in. The more personnel you can bring on board, the better it's going to be in terms of being able to get all of the coverage that you're going to need within that organization. So let's again look at some typical structures. Here's one where you've got it split out with technical security and risk management and policy in 2 separate groups. Here's one example of how you might configure, and then of course you've got some subgroups under that technical security component. Let's look at another example. Here you've fleshed it out a little bit more. You've got technical security and compliance. And then you've so instead of splitting on policy and risk management, you've split based on compliance, and then you've got a risk assessment and a risk management group that are split out, and then some subgroups underneath your technical services that look at it a different way. All right, well, good. I've given you two structures for a large organization, talked about very large organizations, talked about the lesson objectives even for this first video on organizing for security. And in the next video, we're going to come back and start looking at medium-sized companies, companies that are a bit smaller, and how they work within a security organization.